Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America and all the ships at sea. It is time for a break from the negative. While this puppet's mission is to tell the truth and expose the darkness at every turn, I was thinking this past week about how that most likely comes across as drab, depressing, and gloom when done with no respite. So for a change of pace, your cloth prognosticator has decided to do a video about all things to be thankful for. Otherwise known as counting our blessings. Something normally done in the United States as a national holiday every late November, only this time in June. You know what this puppet is first most thankful for? I've actually thought about this one many times over the years. The fact that of all places upon this earth, God chose to allow me to be born in the United States of America. Now I know this nation has its fair share of faults, but that is not what this video is about. I truly believe that for the broad range of complainers and whiners within the borders of this nation, a good travel outside the borders would help to wise you up, and wise you up fast. During my lifetime, this puppet has had the privilege to be able to travel outside the United States on more than a few occasions, and it has always struck me how blessed we are truly after I see how many people struggle in other countries. Now, I also realize that perhaps if you travel to some other Western nations, you will see similar standards of living as to that experienced within the USA, but I also will add that the governmental systems in even more than a few of what we would call first world nations do leave a bit to be desired. Now, you also know from having watched me for the past year, yes, I have been at this for one full year already, that I have my fair share of gripes and complaints when it comes to the elite running this nation in very wrong ways. But much of that still does not compare to scams and corruption being foisted upon citizens in even many European nations. Step off a boat at the Bahamas and have the locals string a length of coral beads around your neck, basically begging you to pay them some money so they can feed their families for the week, and you will know what I am talking about. Any one of us under the sound of my voice could have been born in much worse circumstances, and that is truly something to be grateful for. You know what else I am always grateful for? Why, that would be the fact that I live in modern times. Yes, and you know fully well what I am talking about on this one. Think for a moment about the daily struggle of life that people even 100 years ago had to endure. Things like no electricity in their homes, so that they had to eat dinner and try to read by the very dim light of candles and lanterns. Try that sometime, and you'll be thankful for the advent of alternating current and the incandescent light bulb. Turn on your bath shower and step in daily, and you're enjoying the inconvenience of pleasure of something we take for granted now, but our ancestors of merely 100 years ago almost never experienced. No, they were heating water by coal stoves and pouring it into galvanized bathtubs for their weekly cleansing sessions. Oh, and often the entire family shared the same tub of water. Yep, now be thankful. Now let me speak to something that often many of us never consider as far as things to be thankful for. Well, that would be none other than our daily bread. Yes, the daily nourishment we feed ourselves with. Now, I realize that perhaps a few watching this video will be in fact struggling with having the necessary money to buy their food, and especially so after the inflation of late. But I also do think that largely so many people in the USA are not seeing daily food anxiety like so many in Africa, Asia, and other parts of the world are. In fact, this puppet can attest to something my mother used to tell us as kids at the dinner table so many years ago. Mom used to say to us, "Clean your plates. There are many starving children in India." Now, to a young puppet like myself, I often did not take that true depth of that she was saying to heart, just seeing the picky eater that many young children often are. But what she said was the absolute truth. So to this day, I always give our Lord thanks for his abundant mercy daily to feed myself and my family. So, puppet, why are you suddenly going off like a preacher? Why, friends and guests, I just believed it was time to do something not so negative for once. The world is unfortunately full of darkness of late, and it can get us all down to only focus on those things which are corrupt and hidden in secret. Here's something else this puppet gives thanks for: modern medicine. Sure, this ties into the topic of living in modern times I just spoke about, but let me expound a bit. So many in past times that had hypertension, elevated blood cholesterol, or even diabetes simply died, and far too often at young ages. Visit any cemetery sometime that has grave markers going back to the 1800s and look at the ages of many deceased. Folks, often what they passed away from was simply attributed to dying of natural causes, but you and I both know it was most likely something that these days would be highly preventable, either through lifestyle changes or the use of modern medications. And while perhaps those watching might be of the homeopathic or herbal or holistic medicine bent, you still have to also admit the lengthening of the average human lifespan that has been at least partially the result of the discovery and or invention of many modern medications. What else to be thankful for? at least for people up my way in the northern United States, that would have to be global climate change. Yes, you heard it here, and Greta Thunberg would be incensed if she found out. The winters here over the past decade plus have been mild, and we most certainly do not mind that one little bit. Visions of bitter wind chills and snowfalls measured in feet haunt the memories of virtually everyone who has lived in upper North America most of their lives. Well, suffice it to say that temperatures in the 40s and 50s Fahrenheit for most of December, January, and February have been very pleasant to say the least for so many over the past decade or so. Now, you can argue all day and all night regarding the root cause of it, but either way, this puppet is most thankful for global climate change. What else? What else, puppet, to be thankful for? Well, I'm glad you asked. Small things, yes, things you might not even take particular notice of, but are very real blessings all the same. You know, like when you're down on money and an unexpected refund check drops in your mailbox from the insurance company, or when you're in bed with the flu and just the uplifting song you need to hear comes on the radio. You might call these things pure happenstance, but this puppet knows better than that. Some call these things acts of providence. I choose to call them acts of a merciful God. I also believe that each and every one of us needs to be grateful for our parents. This could be your biological mother and father, or it could not. Either way, we all need to give thanks for the sacrifices they made in each of our lives from the age when we were most certainly incapable of caring for ourselves. Now, I know more than a few of us had parents who made mistakes. That is a given in life, is it not? Despite that, I would venture a guess that the majority of us had somewhat enjoyable childhoods. None of that would have been possible without the sacrifices of our parents. For that alone, each and every one of us needs to give many thanks. Next up for this grateful puppet, why, that would have to be the knowledge, talents, and abilities that our good Lord chose to bestow upon me and you. And I believe I can say that everyone watching that this applies in similar manner. I do not care if you are a janitor at the local high school or an astrophysicist. You may have been gifted and afforded knowledge and skills that perhaps many others never were. Maybe it is a positive outlook. Maybe it is good knowledge on how to work on a kitchen appliances. Maybe it is the natural ability to play a musical instrument. Give thanks and give it often. For now, I will leave it at that, kids and cousins, and next week we'll be back to the normal flow of breaking out the truth as it comes to this puppet's ears. Good night, my loyal viewers, and sleep well.